Well, according to my watch now, it's 3 p.m. I think slowly still some people are popping in, but I think in order not to give Dorine enough space, I would like to welcome everyone to another webinar from AFINet, the Addiction and the Family International Network. And we started, I think, 1.5 years ago with our webinars, and usually we have them once a month. And we are interested to have these webinars further on for free, but of course we would welcome any donations if you like them. And of course, we would also like to gain more members for AFINet. So if you're not already an AFINet member, please join us, which will give you the opportunity for improving exchange with other colleagues and to access materials on the AFINet website. But for today, I'm very happy to have Dorine van Namen here. She's a fellow trustee of AFINet, and she works at the University of Applied Sciences in Rotterdam. And hopefully in the nearer future, she will also host the next real life conference of AFINet. And we're looking forward to this. And Dorine has a real exciting biography she sent to me. She's been a journalist for most of her working life, specializing in higher education. Before this, she has also studied social sciences, and she is also an affected family member by herself. And when she attended Al-Anon meetings, it struck her how similar her own experiences and reactions to those experiences were of others. At that point, she decided to, somewhere in the future, do something professionally to make the collectivity of affected family members' experiences visible. And I hope this is also what has brought you to AFINet. And
Yes.
well, actually, somewhere in the future is now. And she noticed that in the Netherlands, like in most other countries, almost no research on family members affected by addiction has been done. And then at the age of 57, she changed careers to do PhD research on the impact of addiction on one or more relatives and family members. And she's specialized on young adult family members, which is students in higher education. And now she's bringing the results of her research back to the classroom. In healthcare courses and in social work, she gives lectures on the consequences of addiction for family members. She's a lecturer for minors, such as child and youth with special care needs, and she supervises graduate students in this field. And today, she'll be presenting part of her PhD research in this webinar, which is entitled Impact of Addiction in the Family on Study Success of Young Adult Family Members. Her talk will be somewhere around 40 minutes, and afterwards you'll have the opportunity to ask questions or, well, we'll have a bit of space for discussion. So I'm very happy to have you, Dorine, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gilles. Very happy to be here. And thank you for your nice introduction. I'll share my screen with you, but if I do, I cannot see you anymore. So if I go too slow or if I go too fast, please let me know. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, looks perfect.
Okay. So let's start. So as Gelle said, my name is Dorine van Namen. I'm a PhD student at Rotterdam University of Applied Sciences and Maastricht University in the Netherlands. First of all, I want to acknowledge my team. So this is what my support team looks like, and I'm happy to say that two of them are here today with us, Gera Nagelhout and Sander Hilbrink. I saw them coming in, so I'm sure they're here. And this is my central research question. My research is about health, substance use, social life, and study success of students of Rotterdam University who have relatives with addiction. So today I will talk about these topics, but of course it will mainly about study success. My research is ongoing and the results are preliminary. My research consists of two parts. A survey about the alcohol and drug use of students themselves, in which questions were included about having a relative with addiction. A total of 5,662 students completed the survey. 881 of them, almost 16%, were affected family members, in short AFMs. 30 of these 881 AFM students participate in qualitative research over a period of 3 years. This is the longitudinal qualitative part. I started in January 2020, so I'm almost halfway now. So what am I going to do today? First of all, share some results of the quantitative research on health, substance use, and study success. Compare the results of students with and without relatives with addiction. Zoom in on what the 30 students who participate in qualitative longitudinal research say about their experiences in education. And when they do, they look back on their high school years and share experiences of their current life at college. And I will make some comments about the resilience of this group. First of all, the survey showed that AFMs were more often female and older than students without relatives with addiction. And students with the Hindu religion were overrepresented in the AFM group. Christian students were overrepresented in the non-AFM group. That is the group without relatives with addiction. Non-AFMs had more study success than AFMs, so AFMs were more often study delayed. AFMs were overrepresented in the study programs social work, teacher training, and arts. Other research shows that family of origin dysfunction, parentification, and childhood adversity are known to be associated with a career choice in the helping professions, such as psychology, nursing, counseling, social work, human services, and education. In my research, the arts was added. So what relationships do these young adult AFMs have? Most of them had parents with an addiction. 7% had two parents, 26% siblings, and 5% partners. And often they had a combination of these relationships. For example, a parent and a sibling, or two or more siblings. 22% had more than one relative with addiction problems. Alcohol was most commonly used by relatives, followed by drugs and painkillers and sedatives. In the survey, only substances were asked, no questions about gambling or sex addiction. On the previous slide, we saw that 22% had two relatives or more, And now the percentage of 32 is added, relatives with more than one addiction. Of the AFMs in this study, the 881 students, almost half did not feel safe or was too ashamed to discuss the substance use of a relative at university. Let's have a brief look at the health and substance use of students themselves before we zoom in on study-related issues. AFMs reported poorer physical and especially poorer mental health. They felt less calm and peaceful, more often downhearted, and less energetic. AFMs were more often daily smokers, used more often illegal drugs and stimulant medication than non-AFMs. Cannabis was used more often among AFMs, while ecstasy was used more often by non-AFM students. No differences in alcohol use or hazardous alcohol use were found, but AFMs more often drank alone than non-AFMs. Let's have a closer look at substance use and the effects for studying. Compared to non-AFM students, AFMs were more often under the influence of drugs while at university and more often used drugs at university, for example during a break. Again, for alcohol, no differences were seen. AFMs experienced significantly more negative consequences of drug use for their studies than non-AFMs. AFMs more frequently performed badly on a test or in a project, missed class or suffered from memory loss. And again, no differences between the two groups for alcohol. So this is what the figures from our survey say about study success, but what do students say themselves? As I said in the beginning, there are 30 students I follow for a period of 3 years. I interview them at least once a year. What does this group of 30 look like? Again, more women than men. They follow a wide range of study programs, from economics to social work, from engineering to arts. On average, these 30 had 3.6 relatives with addiction. Only 3 had only 1 relative. Of 24 students, the parents are divorced, 3 have lost a relative to addiction, and the inclusion of students with a Muslim or Hindu background was not successful, despite considerable effort from my part. Perhaps feelings of shame play an even bigger role in this group than generally is the case. During the time of the first interview, almost 1/3 was study delayed. There's a slight increase in study delay in the second year, but this can be partly attributed to the COVID pandemic. The 30 students described various stressful situations that made studying difficult. Most affecting was the constant presence of insults and humiliations. One student said, "Every day my alcoholic stepfather told me I was stupid, so stupid, or that I looked like a pig. My biggest problem is that I started to believe these humiliations myself. I keep looking for confirmation that I am not stupid." Apart from insulting and degrading comments on a daily basis, there were chaotic home situations. illness or death of the relative, informal care and no peace to study. Students had to take care of the household or of siblings. There were financial problems that prevented them from using the right books, laptops, computers. Some students described that their relative had too high standards and many were bullied at high school. And often it was a combination of these circumstances. I found the bullying part very striking. Many students had the experience of being bullied. About being bullied, my mother was incontinent due to her addiction. The sofa smelled of urine, and so did my clothes. After I sat on the sofa, I was bullied a lot about that. In the end, I had to go to another school. Or about a father who set a high bar for his son. I played football, and when I had a good match, my father would say in the car, "It was good, but just this, just that." And if I came home with a B, then it wasn't an A. It was never good enough. These stressful situations led to all kinds of problems. Looking back at high school, students described rebellious behavior, repeating a year of school, underachievement, dropping a level, a truancy because being too tired to get up, motivational problem. They had difficulty concentrating, memory impairment, panic attacks when entering a school building, crying when graded well, feelings of not being good enough, fear of failure, extreme ambition, and perfectionism. One student described the situation that she suddenly started crying during an assessment, just because things were going well. I thought, oh dear, I can really do. Students describe using alcohol or drugs themselves to manage stress, but also describe that their past is a motivation to do well at school. My father always said, you are never going to achieve anything in your life. But I just took that as motivation. If I don't feel like studying, I think I wasn't going to achieve anything in my life, was I? And then I study harder. Things are going very well at school. Some students disclosed to teachers and study coaches and asked for help. And when they asked for help, in many cases, teachers tried to help. Sometimes help was perceived helpful, sometimes it was not. Students reflect on their high school days and they describe the situation at university. What help did they receive? At high school, they sometimes could use a quiet room for homework. They sometimes received understanding from teachers. One student described a situation that she, after being placed out of the house, she could drive to her old school with a teacher who lived in her new neighborhood so that she could stay in her old school. When I was placed out of home, I could stay at my old school because I could drive to school every day with a teacher who lived in my neighborhood. Another student became the babysitter of one of her teacher's children, so she always had an escape from home. In relation to the situation at university, they described the following helping support. In general, university can be and often is an escape, a place where the problems from home are absent. If students can disclose, they often feel heard and seen. Sometimes they have anxiety attacks at school or when they enter the school building, and sometimes teachers are willing to meet outside the school. Adjustments in the study program were made, so they got individual assignments instead of group projects. The assignments in the study program social work aimed at self-knowledge were perceived very helpful. Many students in the program social work described their studies as therapy. There were teachers encouraging students to take rest. There were teachers helping with structure, procrastination, and planning. A 24-year-old man said, "I was really depressed at the time. I didn't think I could save my studies, and she, the teacher, told me not to worry and to do things in little steps, focusing on the small goals I could achieve. That's why I did not drop out." There were teachers thinking along with the student about suitable help and look for ways to limit study delay. One student said, "I didn't want to live anymore. I was really done with it." Then the teacher sat down with me for hours to see what they could do. One of them linked me to the right therapy. I'm still grateful for that. There were internship supervisors who took a vulnerable past into account. There was a very helpful advice from a teacher: do your best because you like something, not because you think you are not good enough. And there is the game where the format, I don't know how to call it, if you really knew me, or challenge day. In the Netherlands, it's called Over de Streep. A group of students are asked questions such as, if you are an only child, step over the line. But also, have you ever thought about suicide, then step over the line. The program aims to change the way students view each other and create awareness about each other's backgrounds. Those who have participated in this, so in Challenge Day, see it as helping. Also because that it was a place to meet fellow AFMs. Students also say they have received support from classmates, for example, after the death of a relative, due to the effects of addiction. But there was also support that was not so helpful. There were teachers betraying trust, especially on high school, by contacting parents after promising not to. One student said, "I once discussed it with my mentor at high school. He was the first adult I confided in. He was a really nice man. But he discussed it with my parents, despite the fact that he promised me not to. I was very angry about that. In the end, I did forgive him, but I never talked to anyone about it after that." There were teachers showing no interest in the causes of troublesome behavior. And if grades were good, no extra attention was paid. As non-helping support, at university was the fact that every year students have a different study coach. So just when they confided in someone, the next year they got a different coach. Or study coaches were much more attentive to family members of someone with cancer or other diseases. One student said, "I told my coach what was going on. She listened, and every now and then she asked me how things were going. But there was also someone in my class whose mother had cancer. And the teachers asked him every day how he was doing, and whether he needed extra time to study or for a test. Well, they didn't ask me that, and I didn't get that much interest either. It seems that cancer is more important, but what I went through was maybe just as difficult." I have to take a little bit of water. In general, students describe the situation at university much more positively than the situation at high school. I think that the fact that parents are no longer partners at school when students are over 18 must play a role here. This group of students seems to be very resilient. They made it to and through university, and most did not have study delay. There's a lot to say about the resilience of this group. For me, it's still work in progress, but I highlight some aspects of it which are related to study success. A stable family environment and supportive relationships are identified as factors that contribute to resilience. In general, students from my research had teachers who were supportive, and sometimes more, sometimes less helpful. Some of the students were able to ask for help and to accept help. And they certainly are very much goal-oriented. Every year I ask them what goals they have for the coming year, and these goals are remarkably often achieved. Most students have a positive attitude in life. They take motivation from their past, and most are determined to create a better life for themselves. Sometimes they can even laugh about what they have experienced. As I said, much more to say, but perhaps resilience can be a good theme for another webinar. And Gallus, I'm not going to make the full 40 minutes because I'm reaching the end of my webinar. I want to summarize the most important points. AFM students reported poorer physical and poorer mental health. Used more substances than non-AFM students. Drank alone and used cannabis more often than non-AFMs. Had more frequent study delay. Experienced more negative effects of their drug use and academic functioning than their non-AFM peers, such as performing poorly on tests or in projects. Almost half of the AFMs in this study felt unsafe or too ashamed to disclose about their family problems at university. But when students disclose to teachers, they generally feel supported or very supported. Teachers can really make a difference. And students describe more positive experiences about university than about high school. Finally, I have some recommendations for schools and universities to be more aware of the importance of detecting and supporting AFMs because of the risk to which this group is exposed. Attention in education for the effects of addiction in the family can address the taboo on this topic, with the goal of stimulating disclosure. And a special recommendation for teachers: do not promise confidentiality, but say that you want to be free to discuss the situation with one colleague. Because of course it is understandable that the teacher is so upset about what he or she hears that he or she wants to do something. But do not enlist help behind the student's back. Involve the student in any follow-up steps. And of course, a big thank you to the 30 young people who participate in my research, for their trust and for their openness. That was it. Okay. Thank you very much for listening. Happy to answer questions. I'll probably need a little bit time to translate my answers in English, but
your English is just fine. Thank you very much for your excellent talk. And if you have any questions or comments, just raise your hand and hopefully I'll notice, or alternatively, you can use the chat function. And since there are no questions so far, just one question that popped up in my mind was, you already mentioned it was impossible to recruit any AFMs with a Hindu or Muslim background.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder, according to which criteria have you selected the 30 participants in your qualitative research?
I wanted to have a group that was as broad as it could be as broad as possible. So from many study programs, men and women, different ages, different study years, and with and without study delay.
Okay, so I think that's a very good approach for showing the whole heterogeneity. There's a first question from Alessandra Bassi. She says, very interesting. Why didn't you ask also gamblers AFMs?
Well, because of the length of the questionnaire. So that was very practical. Practical.
And Jim has raised his hand. So Jim, if you just could put on your camera and unmute yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Dorine. Really interesting talk. I've got two questions for you. One, am I right that in the Netherlands, when you go to university, you probably go away from home? That's how it is in Britain. Most university students leave home during the university term time. They're living away from home. Is that the case in the Netherlands? And if so, is that one reason, do you think, why the students were having a better experience at university than at high school? Although, of course, they will also be older. They'll be older as well, of course. That was one question. Shall I ask the second question now, or let you answer the first?
Let me answer the first one.
Okay.
It's not necessarily the case that students move out of the house, and certainly when they are going to university in the city they already lived in, and that often is the case in Rotterdam, then it is not unusual to stay at home because it's so difficult to find a house or a room here. So it's not necessarily the case, no.
My second question was about, I was really interested to see how many people there were who had more than one person in the family with an addiction problem. There were a lot of them.
Yes.
And am I right, in your qualitative study, almost everybody
Yes, that's
had
true.
more than one. So was there a sampling effect that
I think so, yes.
people who had two or more were more interested in talking about it?
I think so, yes.
But then the way you described the results of the qualitative, it looked as if most people were talking largely about one key relative who had an addiction problem. So I'm interested in how they were affected by having two or more. Did they often have two parents with addiction problems, or one parent and one sibling? And how did that affect people?
No, I think it's just the quotes that gives you the impression that they only talk about one of their family members. That is not the case. Now I have to think about answering this in correct English. They say, well, because they have so many relatives, they say, well, it's everywhere and it's there all the time. There's no escape, and perhaps there is an escape if it's only one person. But when some of them said, well, actually it's everybody, or it's everybody on my father's side of the family, on the mother's side of the family. So even if I go to grandparents or uncles or aunts, it is always there. So I think that is what affects them the most, that there is no escape. Does that answer your question, Jim?
Yes, it does. And I think that's very interesting, because some research that Richard Velleman and I did many years ago on adults who had had a parent with a drinking problem, we certainly concluded that if for those who had two parents, both with alcohol addiction problems, then things were much worse. So your results make me think that we spend a lot of time talking about families where one person has an addiction problem. Maybe we should spend more time talking about and thinking about families where two or more.
I totally agree with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting.
I totally agree. And it's often a parent and a sibling.
Okay, there's also
in the case when parents, that is something that is striking, I think. When parents are divorced and the mother has an addiction problem, the mother always chooses a new partner with addiction problems. So the stepfathers in this group are always have addiction problems, because the mother chooses mothers much more than fathers choose partners with addiction problems. So that's when new people with addiction problems enter the life of the students.
Okay. Now there's also a question that from Liane van der Giesen, which has been, lucky me, translated into English in a second step because I wouldn't have been able to read it out in Dutch. And the question is, do you advise to ask students at the start of the study if they have an AFM and experience stress and so on to go to the study advisor?
Yes, I really advise that. I think that will make a real difference. Yes.
Okay. Another question which popped up my mind was It's also again two questions. One is rather a bit a methodological one. Is how did you how did you ask in your survey whether they got a family member with addiction? Did you ask straightforward, and did you specify drugs, alcohol, anything else? Or
In the questionnaire?
yeah,
Yes, drugs, alcohol, and about the students or the own
yeah,
use of students or their family members?
family members.
Yes, drugs, alcohol, and tranquilizers.
Ah, okay. Yeah, good to know, because we had one study in Germany that concluded, I don't know, I think 8 million children are raised in family with addiction problems, and they included nicotine dependence. And so I think this might be a bit of a different issue.
No, we did not include nicotine dependence.
Mm.
I
But the
think too that is quite a different story. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the well, there's another question that came in, but if you could elaborate a bit on the differences between home dwelling and not home dwelling students and how they dealt with COVID.
Yes. It made quite a difference whether students were living with their family members, with their relatives with addiction or not. If they were living on their own, so had their own place to stay, then they said COVID was the best thing that ever happened to me, because they were not in the same house with the relatives who were drinking or drug using. But they also didn't feel the need to go there, the necessity to go there anymore, because now they had a really good excuse. They could say, well, sorry, mommy, sorry, daddy, I cannot come. I do not want to give COVID to you, so I stay at home. And it was a way to um, um, well, this is my age. This is what happens when you start a PhD research at 57. Afstand nemen.
Take distance, or
To take distance from family members without feeling guilty about it.
Mhm.
So it's COVID was for that group of students was really a relief. But when students lived in the same house, who still lived in the same house, it was hell.
Okay. There's also another question from Alex, but before this, I would like to jump in, because what we have seen and what I've also learned from the research Jim and Richard and others have done is that another important issue for a subgroup of family members are worries regarding the family member with the addiction problem. And I just wonder whether whether you had such participants in your qualitative study who said, well, I worry a lot that bad things might happen, because I'm not sure whether for these people, COVID might have had a rather different effect.
No, it was striking that in this group they did not worry. They did not. That was, yeah, really remarkable. I know that is the number one strain in other research, but it really was not in my group of 30 students. Actually, no. Sometimes they said they worry a little bit, but it was not a big issue for them. No. So I don't think it plays a role in relation to COVID at all.
Okay, and there's also a question from Alex. Of course, he thanks you for your interesting presentations, and if there were any structured questions, for example, the CD risk questionnaire or any further research plans.
Can you repeat the question about the questionnaires?
Whether you used any structured questionnaires, as far as I see that. I don't know, probably Alex, you might also just
For
unmute
assessing
yourself
health.
and go into further detail.
Thank you for the presentation. And we did also some interviews this autumn, and with them we used this because you talked about resilience, and then it kind of occurred to me that this could fit quite well with this topic. So I was wondering if you used any of these questionnaires. And then the second question was more that what are the future plans for your research, or for this, you know, further topics of research from this. Thank you.
We used questionnaires for assessing health and substance use. I don't know if that's really what you mean, but we did it. And future research, well, I'm still working my PhD research. I'm halfway now, so I continue doing that. It's a longitudinal design, so I follow them every year, sometimes 2 times a year, for a period of 3 years, and that is not finished yet. So I will continue what I'm doing.
So it's one step after another.
Yes, but I'd welcome other PhD students for the same topic or related topics, because there's not much research about AFMs in the Netherlands.
Okay, thanks. I also wonder whether your sample might already be rather resilient by definition, because they're all students, so you got a kind of selection regarding socioeconomic structure where they come from, and probably also, well, problem severity. I assume you have no one who has been affected by FASD or anything. So I wonder if you would consider to, well, also gather data from people who are, in a socially more unstable situation, that come out of well, homes with addiction problems.
No, of course, this is a resilient group. They did not drop out. They made it to university. They make it through university. That, on the other hand, the severity of the problems they describe are, well, really, really, really heavy.
Yeah.
Many of them have been in life dangers. That's a good word. Had their life escaped death. So it's severity of the problems is really high.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any more questions or comments? Raise your hand or use the chat function. I think I already asked quite a lot of questions. But well, maybe what might also be interesting for the audience is you already elaborated in the beginning, there has been rather no research on family members in the Netherlands. You said there's a lot of stigma. It is difficult for students to talk about the issues. So, well, what are the standard offers family members like your students that are affected can receive in the Netherlands?
Well, not much. There's not much. There is some help for young people until the age of 23, 24 for the Dutch people among us, kopgroepen. I asked the students in my research whether they would whether they would like to go. Well, 29 out of 30 did not know that this support existed. And when I explained what it is, and that they are free to go, that it doesn't cost any money, that when they apply, they can go there very quickly. Well, they all said, no, we do not want to go there. And in the second year, I asked, well, did you go? I sent them information and everything, and asked them in the second interview, well, did you change your mind? Did you go? Or, no, nobody did. And for all different kinds of reasons, they said, well, I cannot have the problems of other people on my plate as well. I have enough on my plate. So I said, well, that is not really what it's supposed to be. It's not that you have to solve the problems of others, but that they are so used to that state of mind. So when someone else has a problem, I have to solve it. And that's why they don't want to be in groups. But they go to psychologists, they go to therapy, they go to especially EMDR. Is that an English? Is that the same in English? Yeah. And they find the trauma therapy the most effective and the most helpful.
Okay, important to know that we also need to sensibilize psychotherapists and so on regarding addiction in the family. This is also what the experience we made when we did a craft trial, that we received quite a lot of participants from psychotherapists who usually are not trained to deal with addiction problem in families or relationships. But I see that Gera Nagelhoch, hope I pronounce it right, has also raised her hand.
Yeah, Nagelhout, but that's very difficult to pronounce. I'm also involved in the research, and I just wanted to add that I found it very interesting that they said that they didn't want to go to these COP-COF groups to get support and talk with others with the same experience. But that they were interested in meeting the other ones who were interviewed and wanted to maybe get together and discuss things with them. So that's like almost the same as such a support group. So I thought that was really interesting, and perhaps Dorine can reflect on that a bit.
Yes, they are really curious about each other, and what I'm now conducting the third year of interviews, and then in the second and in the third year, they all ask questions about each other. So, what do the other persons say about this subject or that subject, and can we meet, or is there anyone in my study program? Is there someone in my study year? Can you connect? Can you bring us in contact? So I think it doesn't have the it's not therapy if they got to know each other like that, just through me and in school, and it doesn't have the layer of therapy on it. I think that must be it.
Yeah, or maybe because it's then their own idea to get together. It's something else than if someone else decides that you have to get together, or that you want to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and more informal. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, and my research is an intervention itself. Very many students keep on working with me, so much more than we originally thought. And they all say, well, and I really like talking to you, and I'm so happy that someone in university pays attention to this, or they say I feel very recognized that someone does this research for 4 years, and it must really be something if that is made possible, if someone gets the time to do that. It Now I realize it is really something. It is not something I invented or made bigger in my head. It is really something. And now I feel much more at ease. Yeah, it is an intervention, this research.
Yeah. And there's another question in the chat, which is, how do you explain that on the one hand, your participants used frequently substances and they had many troubles, and on the other, they were so self-determined?
Yes, that is surprising. That is true. When I asked them, do you see any advantages in having relatives with addiction? They all said yes. We are warned. So that we will not be addicted ourselves somewhere in our life. And and then when I asked them how much alcohol they drink or how much drugs they use, sometimes it's quite a lot. And one of them had even been admitted in addiction care. So yeah, that is remarkable. That is true. Yeah.
One possibility might be that they got another conception of addiction, like people without family members who have an addiction. You know, it's like if you're faced almost daily with, I don't know, heavy intoxication, then you might get the idea that, I don't know, being dizzy throughout the day still is okay, as long as you do not pass out. Because I just wonder, we know that children from children of alcoholics, how you call them, they are the highest risk group for developing alcohol use disorders by themselves. And if I look at the number, I was just wondering, I mean, I thought the rates of drug users in your whole sample were, well, absolutely stunning. Like, I don't know, I think it was 75% cannabis users, which I thought was, wow.
Yes, very high levels of drug use. He's loading my presentation again.
Okay. So
can you see it?
I can't see it already, but just for curiosity, is this, would you consider this to be an average value on universities in the Netherlands, or is this a bit more than you would have expected?
I don't know, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I already, no, it is substance use among students in the Netherlands is high. Not only in our university, so, but if it's higher in our university, I don't think so, no.
Okay.
It is rather high, yeah.
Yeah, stunning. Okay, so at the moment there are no further questions in the chat, so I would say last option if you want to comment or ask a question, now's the time. We've been already discussing things for more than, I think, there's another question which is very broad. How do you define substance use?
How?
Probably Yvonne might want to elaborate a bit on this, because I think it's, as it stands in the chat, it's a very broad.
Yes. Here I am. I'm meant to help you because what did you ask the students about their drug use? Was it once a year or last month or every week, or
We asked all that, and the figures I showed you are last month.
Last month. So yeah. 85% of all the students in your
students who used
were blowing. We're using cannabis. I think it doesn't.
Of the students who used drugs in the past month.
Okay.
So this
So only
is
past
whole
month
sample.
users are included. I tried. I cannot
Okay.
share my screen. Do you see my
Because
screen?
there was a large survey last week or 2 weeks ago published in the Netherlands, and there was also a very high level on student drug use and alcohol use, but it wasn't that high. It was 50% or so.
It's the. I think it's 50% in our sample as well. It's 80 or 85%. I cannot share my screen now.
I think
I
at
don't
the
know why.
moment
Because
I can
it's
use your
only.
slides.
Sorry, Gallus?
I think at the moment I can use your. I can move your slides. I don't know why, but actually, at least I can. I don't know which slides.
Yeah, I could do that too. That's I don't know why how it works.
But can you see the slides?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Then I can.
All right, so I see illegal drugs last month, 25% no AFMs, 31% AFMs, and then cannabis, ecstasy, and so on. These are the numbers of all drug users only.
Of only drug users past month.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this was, I didn't really actually read the slide with enough concentration. So
Okay. Yeah.
I was
No. It's
thinking,
not 85% of the total sample. No.
yeah. Okay, lucky
Thank
to
God.
hear that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think there are no further comments or questions. So again, thank you very much, Dorine, for your excellent talk. I would like to announce another webinar we'll be having on December the 14th. And we'll move from the Netherlands to Scotland, and Justina Murray will talk about Ask the family perspectives on whole family support and family inclusive practice in Scotland. So we'll still be in a rather practical topic. And of course, I'd be happy to see you all in December. And thank you very much for joining us. And of course, biggest thank goes to Dorine and also to Alex, who supported the technical infrastructure. And without her, also this webinar would not have been possible. And of course, a big thank you to Richard Wellerman, who couldn't join us today because he's on his way back to India, but who's the chief organizer of all webinars we have in AFINet. And I see many people also are saying thank you, Dorine, in the chat. And so goodbye for today, and hopefully see you in December.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Last question, Dorine. The recording, will this be available or?
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful.